This video is for topic 1.4, multiplying and dividing with significant figures. And so yesterday we worked with how to do addition and subtraction. Multiplication and division have their own rules, and I feel like they're a little bit easiest to work with. So in addition and subtraction, we care about what's in the decimal. In multiplication and division, we care about what's in the entire value, and you always use the fewest or least number of significant figures. So here's an example to take a look at what I mean by that. When we start out, we have this 3.05. I'm not really worried about units at this point. You would do the Atlantic Pacific rule to it. It has a decimal, so that means Pacific, so you go left to right. So this has 3 significant figures, and 8.471, Pacific rule again, it has 4. So it asks how many, or which number has the least number of significant digits. So that's going to be the one with 3, so 3.05. And then it asks how many sig figs can be an answer, so we are limited to 3. And that's in the entire number now at this point. So when you put this through your calculator, you get a really long number to start. So this is the original number that you get, and so you are limited to 3 in the entire number. So you would do the Pacific rule here because there's a decimal, and this is where we can start counting, the 360. After that, we're going to cut this off, and we have to look at, does it round? And it's not. So this is where zeros start to become really important on when you keep them and when you do not keep them. So the answer becomes 0.360, and that is now rounded to 3 significant figures. So here's 4 practice problems that I'll talk you through. So the same idea to start is you're going to count how many sig figs are in the number. So decimal's present, so this one has 4. Decimal present, this one has 2. Again, you're limited to your fewest number of sig figs, which is 2. So go ahead and multiply those two numbers together, and when you do that, you get an answer of 11.44. You start at your largest place value, which is the 11, or the 10 spot, and that has the 1, so we can keep these 2. You look for rounding, which the 4 will not round up the 1, so our final answer to 2 significant digits is 11. In example B, we have 23.7. This has 3 sig figs in the whole value. 3.8 has 2. You go with your least amount, which is 2. So when you type this into your calculator, you get an answer of 90.06. So again, you start at your largest place value, which is the 1, or in the 10 spot, and then we have our 1 spot. So we can keep this. Everything after the decimal is going to have to go. And there was some problems on your rounding assignment that was very similar to this and was frequently missed. It was kind of, again, not really a trick question, but it's something you have to kind of stop and think about. So this does not have 2 significant figures. It's Atlantic right now, and so only the 9 is counting. So how you make that 0 count to make this a more accurate measurement, we're going to put a decimal on the end, and this becomes 90 with a point. Nothing after it. That's 2 sig figs with 90 and the point. In example C, our first value has 4 sig figs. Our second one has 2. So again, we can keep 2 in our answer. So this is a division, so when you run this through, you get something like this. So we can keep 2 place values. So we can keep the 3 and the 9. Everything else is going to go, and we kind of get a domino effect. So this is going to round it so that 9 rounds, but in doing so, it also is going to round up that 3. So this becomes 4, but we said here that you must have 2 significant digits. So in order to make this value have 2 sig figs, we're going to put a decimal and a 0. So we're going to change that to 4.0. Again, the reason why was that 9 rounded up this 9, and then that 9 then rounded up our leading value, So again, we needed to make that count by adding a 0. And then for this last example, we have 5 sig figs here and 3 sig figs here. Final answer can have 3. When you type this in, you get 2,799.9598, or 7598, I should say. So now, when we take a look, we said we can have 3. So we can keep the thousands, hundreds, and tens. This one's similar to example C, in that we're going to get a little bit of a domino effect here. So what comes after is going to round. So that 9 is going to round this up, which in turn rounds this up. So to start, I'm going to just write down 2,800. Now, it says we need to have 3 sig figs. Right now, this is currently Atlantic, so I only have 2 in my answer. So what I need to do is make one of those zeros count. So what you can do to make those zeros count is turn it into scientific notation. So that's why we practice writing numbers in scientific notation early on, and now we're going to start using that with significant figures. I only need one of the zeros to count because it says 3 sig figs. So we're going to move the decimal to the left. This is going to become 2.80 times 10 to the third. So again, let me walk you through that. So that 9, rounded up this 9, rounded up the 7. So I just wrote down 2,800 to start, and it told me I need 3 sig figs. I need to make one of those zeros count. So what you need to do, like here we had to put a decimal in order to make this one count. It's not going to work in this situation with the 2,800, because then you're going to ultimately change the number by just putting a random decimal in the middle of the number. So what we need to do is put it into scientific notation, and that makes that 0 count. For example, let's say it wants 4 significant figures. If this would have wanted 4, we would have put 2.800 times 10 to the third. And I'm not sure if you can hear that in the background, but I'm making a video at home, and Celeste decided now is a great time to work on eating cardboard. I had lots of tech issues at school today, so I have to make my video at home tonight. Okay, so here is some practice for you to try out and see how it goes. So again, like last week, or with the last video I should say, I would really recommend that you pause the video at this point, try these out on your own, and then take a look at how I work them through. So hopefully you did that. So we have, oops, get the screen back up. So this is 2, 2, and 4. So that limits us to 2 total sig figs in this answer. You get 6.72672 on your calculator. To round that off, you should have said 6.7. 150 divided by 4, that 150 has 2, 4 has 1. You can only have 1 in your final answer, so this is 37.5. So you can only keep the 10 spot, so this rounds it up to 40. No decimals needed, because again, what we're looking at here is we don't want that 0 to count. Let's say we wanted 2 sig figs, that's when we would put a decimal in order to make that 0 count. In the next example, we have 3 sig figs and 8.08, and our decimal value here has a total of 5. So we can keep 3 in our final answer. So for that, when you typed it in, you get 42.9856. So we can keep these 3 spots here. We're going to have rounding, and that little bit of domino effect is what I call it when we start rounding things up. So you must include a decimal in order to give that value 3 sig figs. And then this last one is a little bit tricky. So this one has 5 sig figs. When it's in scientific notation, you only count this part, so it has 3. So So our final answer is 3. When you type this in, you get 100 as your answer. We need to make all of those zeros count. So the way that we go about that is you have kind of two options here. You can put a decimal on the end and say 100 with a dot, or you can say 1.00 times 10 to the third. If you are feeling stuck on sig figs, needing extra help with sig figs, you need to make sure that you're reaching out to me. We can set up a time for a Google Meet, and we can kind of work through these in areas that you are struggling.